Senator Canavan.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. Well, there is not much more important topic for Australia's agricultural industry, and indeed all Australians, than the biosecurity settings of our country. We are very lucky to have the cleanest, greenest, safest food supply system in the world. Not only is that, of course, important for Australians, who of course get to eat that beautiful food, it underpins the economic strength of our agricultural industry, because we do export something like 60% of our farm produce overseas. And so it's absolutely integral that we maintain that safe system, those strong biosecurity settings, to keep those markets open in overseas countries. And so it has been a bit of a shock over the past week to hear the government announce that it would be changing those biosecurity settings, and some are concerned potentially weakening those biosecurity settings when it announced that it would allow US beef to have greater access into the market. The fundamental problem here is that the government hasn't been able to answer basic questions about on what basis this decision has been made and on exactly what terms US beef will be allowed in. I do and will recognise that since 2019 we have allowed American beef into Australia. It has been permitted. I don't believe there's been much, or if any, beef imported from America. But it's been done so. It was approved under the former government under the strictest conditions. In particular, there had to be traceability on US beef to ensure that in the box that may have had an American flag on it, there was no beef coming from Mexico or other parts of the Americas where there is and may be diseases like mad cow disease, which would be devastating if it ever came to these shores. The Americans generally struggle to provide that level of traceability. They don't have the same systems, the same supply chain assurance systems we have in this country. Every calf that's marked gets a little tag in its ear. It's called the NLIS tag, and it will make sure that every time that cow is moved or bull is moved through its life, it's recorded where it's come from, where it goes, and therefore we can tell the customer, the final customer, wherever they may be, exactly where the beef in that box has been raised, has come from, and ensure them that there's no disease in those areas. That system does not apply to anything like that extent in the United States. Not unusual it doesn't, because the US beef industry largely serves its own domestic market. It doesn't seek to have these supply chain assurance systems in place like we do to open up our overseas markets. Now the key thing is here, it would seem like the government is not insisting that the same traceability requirements we have and impose on our beef sector should apply to the US beef sector. As I say, the details still remain somewhat murky about this, but I do have concerns if we don't impose, or we are going to impose, more stringent and strict requirements on our own beef sector than would be applied to a competitor in another country. I mean, surely we should be able to say and tell the Australian people that we will seek to apply the same standards to our businesses as imported products have to apply with in terms of safety requirements on others, because otherwise they'd have a natural advantage, and the American producers would have a natural economic advantage because of our policy settings, and that would be very inequitable to Australian beef producers. This issue has not been helped, though, by the government's confused messaging here. There's obviously a very political element to this, because it is wrapped up with demands from President Trump to open our access to beef, demands from President Trump to do other things in our policy settings, and so it was always going to be viewed with a degree of cynicism, this change, and the government has been left completely flat-footed and unprepared for basic questions. In fact, we've seen the spectacle on the weekend of the Trade Minister saying one thing about a phone call in 1 hour and the next hour saying something else completely different. And so it's absolutely legitimate for the Australian agricultural sector to want answers to questions on this issue. That's why we have moved this motion today. That's why we're pursuing this through other means through the Senate, because the Australian farm industry deserve to know exactly on what basis this decision has been made. They deserve to know the protections are in place for the industry, and even more importantly, Australians as a whole deserve to know those protections are in, because some of these diseases can affect human health as well. It is a very serious matter, and the government should take it much more seriously than they have.